Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Claire Moon of Aligning Light Astrology, and I'm here today to share my thoughts about the upcoming solar eclipse in Libra. It's going to be on October 2nd, 2024, and I'm going to go through by rising sign today. I've been wanting to do more of these, so here is one. Usually I just do now it's been every other week forecast, my monthly forecast. I do it every 2 weeks. I have been doing that. I've been doing my question and response, but I haven't been doing as much of these types of more focused videos. And I think this is actually the most helpful way to get astrology, to be honest, in terms of accessibility for everyone. So if you are newer to astrology, welcome. Hello. I'm so glad you're here. And if you need help getting your rising sign, a couple of my favorite places are Channy Nicholas's website. They have a really great chart generator. And then also astroseek.com, Astrodienst or astro.com. They all have chart generators. So you can type in if you have your birth time. And granted, that's a whole other conversation, but providing you have your birth time, go check that out. Pause this video, come on back if you need to. That's okay. For those of you who are nerds who have been bit by the bug and have your chart at the ready, all right, that's great because that's the best way to use this information today. Before we get into that, and I am going to have timestamps so you can always jump ahead to your rising sign. It's different than your sun sign, just to be clear. And you can use that too. I just think this is more accurate. But before we do all of that, I'm actually going to do a little meditation to kind of ground us, get us firmly situated before we launch off into the stratosphere. I don't think I have any announcements that I need to add to this. I will be referencing a few things, I guess. So citations time. If you have Demetra George's Ancient Astrology Volume 1, this is going to be on I'm going to be using information from page 351, which is kind of hidden because it's the beginning of chapter 32. It's not actually labeled, but it's got some visuals about what eclipses are, because that's what we're talking about today. I'm also going to be, where were my other things? I'm also going to be kind of speaking a bit to, like I use one metaphor for the South Node today that's kind of about pruning and conserving, and that is inspired by Samuel Reynolds. And I've linked the lecture below where Sam Reynolds gives a great take on not only the nodes, but he's really talking about the bendings of the lunar nodes. But in that process, he explains the nodes. And I really love the way that he lays all of that out. So I also linked that below, along with Demetra George's book, if you do not have that, and you would like to really get into like Hellenistic era astrology and the practice of it. So, okay, those are my references. I guess other reference, good segue into meditation-y time. Because I think like so much of this practice of astrology, we can get into kind of difficult mind spaces sometimes, depending on what it's about or what's going on in our lives. I know sometimes it can be, used as more of a planning tool in more of a neutral sense. That's generally how I like to do it. But if you do find yourself in, I don't know, difficult circumstances, and at any point during this forecast, you're feeling like more tension, that's a sign to probably put it down. I'm going to try to avoid that as much as possible, but that's a good sign to know that astrology is probably not the best tool in the toolbox at the moment. And then more grounding into needs, which actually reminds me, I need to put one of my other citations should be, I'm going to write this down. Is Dr. Tara Brach? Dr. Tara Brach's Rain adaptation from Michelle McDonald. I'm going to link that below. That's a way to kind of identify what might be needed. That's not astrology related necessarily, if you need to. So self-care options available on the table, linked below when I get to it. And then I guess at this point, and two, if you're like, whoa, what's this meditation lady? What are you talking about? Isn't that for spiritual weirdos? You can totally go get a snack. If this is something where you're like, don't really want to be in my body, actually really kind of safe and fine in my little other like state or dissociative state or mental state, that's totally for you to know. If it's not safe for you to do this practice with us right now, which is more body focused, feel free to also go have a snack or go, do anything else for probably about 5 minutes, no longer than that. Or skip ahead, of course. And I'm so used to doing live stuff. I'm like talking like people are actually here. For those of you who know, like if you look at my channel, like everything is live. I thought about doing this live, but I don't know. I just wanted to kind of power through and like focus. So I apologize for those of you who appreciate my liveness. Okay. Anyway, this comes from the Roshi Joan Halifax deck. In a Moment, in a Breath. And it's a lot of nice little meditation prompts that I like to use. This one is Earth, which, I mean, if I am correct, we still have a sun that is an Earth, the last degree of Virgo. So here's for our last degree of Virgo sun. I'm going to just read through this and then I'm going to do it myself because it's so nice, in my opinion. And it's called Facing the World. So, little Earth card. That's what it looks like. And I'm going to instruct us. So if you're, listening to this and you're like walking or driving, just adapt to whatever, in whatever safe way you need to. Or if you can't sit up and you're lying down, that's totally fine too. But this says, sit with your spine and neck upright and flexible. Your chin is slightly tucked in, giving a small lift to the crown of your head. Your jaw is soft. Your teeth are barely touching. Your tongue is lightly pressed against the hard palate behind your teeth. Your mouth is relaxed with a slight smile on the lips. The tissue around your eyes is soft. This is your face and how you face the world. Upright, soft, alert, and at ease. Be with your breath and body, and be with the world. I feel like she tricked us into a good attitude. I really like that. That's very nice. And that's something too that Thich Nhat Hanh talks about a lot, is smiling. And I know that can be kind of triggering depending on if you're like a femme presenting person or a woman and you've had that like, bark to you or whatever. But there is something really, there's some kind of special secret sauce in like allowing the face to relax into a smile. I don't know what it is, but it is kind of nice and helpful. It is kind of a gloomy, rainy day where I'm recording right now. So if you're hearing like little pitter patters on the window, I don't know what the mic is picking up. It's a pretty good mic that way. It doesn't seem to pick up stuff, but there's some thunder rolling. It's a beautiful day, but it got a little stormy. And on that note, speaking of what's going on in the weather, let's talk about some weather. And actually, I'll name my points here, but I am going to spend a little bit of time talking about the nodes themselves and about the South Node before we get into the rising signs proper. So I guess first things first, let me show you what I'm talking about. And we've got the South Node in Libra, tropically speaking, right now. There are two types of calculations you can use, true node or mean node. There are different ways of calculating it. They're not that different. They're like a few degrees apart. If it's right on the cusp of a house or a sign on a birth chart, I'll, look at the difference. But you can figure out your preferences there. Either way, we got the South Node in Libra. We have the North Node, the opposite end in Aries. And I just want to point these out and circle these. They're kind of these loopy-doo looking guys, and the South Node is like they look like horseshoes. And one of them is like an upward pointing horseshoe, the south node. And the north node is like a downward pointing horseshoe. And the south node, another name that I'm going to call that today, it's actually a them, and it's K2. And also the north node, I'm going to be calling them Rahu today. And that comes from a myth that I'll get into in just a moment. But I wanted to just point these out on the screen. There they are. And before we get into all the symbolism, I want to also talk about astronomically what they are. And so what these points are, they are actually, yeah, I'll bring up the other little resources that I have. So this is the first one. This kind of shows us a bit of what we're working with. And so if we've got the Earth in the middle here, right? And we've got the ecliptic, which is the path that the sun and the planets take across the sky, which is about 23 degrees off from the horizon, basically. That's our main kind of great circle that we're working with, is the ecliptic, the path of the sun from our point of view across the sky. The moon's path, however, how the moon fits into this, well, just kidding. This is a different view. So here we can see from that middle Earth point, we've got the ecliptic, and then this more orange line, that's the moon's orbit. And this shows us how like they're not quite flush. They're not quite flat and exact with each other. They're about 5 degrees off. And so what that results in, visually speaking, is we see the moon kind of dip below the ecliptic and above the ecliptic, below the ecliptic, above the ecliptic. The moon will end up being a little bit lower in the sky, hanging lower in more southern declination, or being a little higher in the sky in a more northerly declination. So it moves around over the course of the days and the months. But those are two ways of visualizing what we're looking at. So it's at these different circles that the sun and the moon are making, these different paths. When the sun and the moon meet at that intersection, that's when an eclipse happens. And these lunar nodes, the moon's nodes, that's where eclipses happen, and they're marked by these loopy-doos, the horseshoes. So here's the one that we're working with on October 2nd. It's in Libra, and the node itself is at 8 degrees. And the sun and the moon are actually at 10 degrees. So this is a partial eclipse. It's when they're exactly by degree, we get a total eclipse. Here, it's going to be just partial. It's got to be within 13 degrees, which is the travel of the moon in a day, approximately. It's got to be within 13 degrees of a node. So that's like if we see the sun and the moon having a lunation 15, 20 degrees away from the node. Not technically an eclipse necessarily. Maybe other people have different definitions that I'm not aware of, and that's okay too, but that's the one that I've learned. So here we got it's within 4 degrees, so definitely in that eclipse type of territory. Oh shoot, I forgot to look up who this is going to be visible for. I guess I'll put that information below. Make a little note for myself on that too. Which areas geographically will be able to see this eclipse, for Pete's sake. Yeah, that's usually fun to know too, because then you can watch it through your box if it's a solar eclipse and it's the daytime and you can see it. Or you can get the glasses, I guess. Or if it's a lunar eclipse, then it's at night and you're looking at the moon. That's the one we just had on the 17th. If anyone was watching that, that was also a partial eclipse. And so it looked like the moon didn't totally get a shadow over it. Yeah, that was what's 6 plus 5, 11. That was 11 degrees away. It was like a little side of the moon got a little blurry for a while. That's what it looked like. So hopefully that gives you an idea visually and astronomically a bit more what we're working with, but also in Demetra George's book, that's that page 351, Ancient Astrology Volume 1, that gives another great visual of it. And so another thing to know too, now that we have these points, these lunar nodes where the path of the sun and moon cross and eclipses happen, um, in terms of the moon's path around there, week by week, we can watch the moon. I'll just keep animating it, but it'll just keep moving around here. And basically, when the moon is reaching the south node, that's where it's starting to dip below the ecliptic and get in lower declination. When the moon reaches the north node, it's passing that point where it's not that where those planes are equal and in the same place, the sun and the moon, their paths are in the same place. It's at that point and it's about to go up and above. So that's like the ascending node, the north node, the ascending node. It's literally when the moon is starting to ascend in its declination instead of being on the lower part of it. And there's symbolism that we get from this that I see and I have examples of the nodes being these points. And I've heard Austin Coppock talk about this as well. And I can't remember what, I believe it was a forecast episode of the Astrology podcast, but kind of the blurriness. So this is the first symbolic point I guess I'm running into, is the blurriness of the nodes and where they are. There's this kind of, again, those paths of the sun and the moon are intersecting and they're in the same place. And you're not below, you're not beneath in declination, you're not above, you're in the middle. And there's kind of this kind of blurring of edges and blurring of boundaries that I notice with North Node, especially in the material world. There's another word, material world, which we'll get to why I'm saying that with the North Node. Of course, there's always dichotomies and dualities all over astrology. And so then we can also say, so yeah, blurring of edges, blurring of boundaries too with the South Node. Sure, why not? But now in more of a spiritual, immaterial sense. So that's another symbolic point that we're gonna be working with today. But yeah, to get back to the astronomy, is there anything else I need to say about it? Every planet has their own set of nodes. Mark Jones is the astrologer I've heard talk most about other planets' nodes. But again, I want to point to Sam Reynolds as a really good lecture. It's $15 for the audio. It's $25 if you want the PowerPoint that he does. He did at Norwalk. But then they're also talking about this 90-degree point between the nodes called the bendings, which I'm not going to talk about today. But he gives a really good complete picture of everything. So, okay, I think we got the astronomy down. I think that's enough about that. And let's see. Yeah, I mean, I shouldn't say that. There, if you are interested, there's a lot more astronomically, like, because I'm not talking about like the ordering of like the Earth, the sun, and the moon, and which is where to get what shadow on what. Like, if you're interested in learning more about that and seeing that visually, you're gonna have to Google. But that stuff is good to look at too. It's good to visualize it from a lot of different angles. Okay. What were my other points? I think, okay, let's get into some of the symbolism. So I'm just gonna riff on things that I learned from Chris Brennan and his coursework from hearing Austin talk on the Astrology podcast and elsewhere in lectures about the nodes. That's where I learned first the Jyotish myth. That comes from more Hindu, Indian astrology, those traditions. And so it's gonna come from there, come from Sam Reynolds. Who else? Demetra George. Those are pretty much that's my influences here. So as far as Hellenistic astrology goes, there wasn't a ton that they mentioned about the nodes, except for like Vedius Valens spends a ton of time telling us about how much the North Node sucks and how much we should avoid it in electional work. Like if you're picking a time to do something, like don't do it when the moon is on the North Node. And then he spends just a lot of time telling you why. So, I mean, as someone who does have the moon on the North Node, I agree. personal bias coming in. Uh, but you know what? I have the experience. The orb, I guess let's talk orbs for a second. I personally like a 3-degree orb in terms of engagement, which is another Hellenistic thing, like an applying aspect by body or degree and engagement adherence, applying within 3 degrees. It's kind of like the strike zone where things get really strong. Although the idea of like an applying aspect, it's, more like a bell curve. It just gets more intense the closer you get, and then it fades away. But I digress. Orbs. This isn't technically, I mean, if we look at it from that more geotish perspective, it is a graha, it's a planet, it's a being. But it is more of like this kind of mathematical calculated location or point in a lot of traditions too. And so for anything that's more of like a calculated point, like a lot or something like that, I like an orb of like 1 to 2 degrees. Uh, Feel free to use whatever orb you would like, or to just watch and see. I like the idea of these working like bell curves, kind of waxing and waning, uh, in less of a discrete way. So, all right, let's see. We've got increasing and decreasing. So that was kind of the main way that Hellenistic astrologers looked at the symbolism related to the nodes. So the south node, sorry, the south node is decreasing. South node's decreasing. North node is increasing. And now I don't know the exact rules, but it's in Carmen Astrologicum, but there's some rules about like buying and selling when the moon is with the south node versus the north node to get the prices that you want for buying or selling. There's specific rules for it. Just really tying into that less or more, increasing, decreasing kind of energy. We can think of the south node. I like to think of letting go. I think that's a common one we talk about with the south node, is letting go of things. I like to think of things in terms of setting them down. It can be a permanent release, a permanent letting go, a permanent setting down, or it can be temporary. So these nodes move through a sign for about 18 months, a year and a half they spend in each sign, and it takes them about 18 years to go around. And these nodes, while they're here, the south node, it can be this temporary year and a half long decrease or less focus in this area of life. So for this theoretical Aquarius rising, this would be in their 9th house of belief. Maybe they're letting go of beliefs, maybe they're letting go of long distance travel. The south node being in the 9th, I don't think it means you'll never, travel again. But maybe for this year and a half, maybe not a lot of long distance travel happens. So yeah, think about it that way. If you want, that's one of the options, is just decrease, and lessening. And some ways to think about decrease and lessening, whether it's temporary or permanent, whether it's setting something down or totally just erasing it from your life, decluttering, like literally pruning of bushes. There can be a spiritual letting go of things. I remember when the South Node was in my own 10th house, and my 10th house has Scorpio and Mars. I was letting go of a career. I was letting go of ways of being in my career and working with people in my career. I was letting go of ways of so many things about the 10th house and how I was operating. And a lot of that, there wasn't physical manifestations. Those were more internal things that were happening during that period of time. So it can be pretty abstract. It can also be very literal. That's another kind of dichotomy to play with. I like to think about the South Node being in a place as doing kind of at least the bare minimum, just to keep things running smoothly. What do you need to do there for things to be not only like just functional, I mean, ideally thriving, but not calling all of your attention? And then, yeah, just a setting down, a letting go, a cleaning out. Now, from this is more geotish perspective, K2 was responsible for a lot of spiritual matters, matters of liberation, matters of kind of self-betterment or realization of self, knowledge. It's really interesting that Rahu, or the North Node, is more about ignorance sometimes, and the South Node sometimes more about knowledge. Uh, there's in either way, kind of with both of these points, there's a lack of stability. It's not super stable. And, just we could think about the real world experience, where some of the symbolism might have come from too. Just in general, we see this in cultures and traditions where they warned against leaders and rulers falling ill or dying during an eclipse. And we see that, if you watch the royal family for just a minute, that is definitely apparent. And, uh, it's like the light giving force of the sun and the moon are being interrupted. Like, what is it to have that one thing that was our earliest clock, the moon, earliest clock, the sun, and those things that were so dependable and necessary for life in so many ways, like agriculture, hunting, especially hunting at night, when the moon is full, for instance, or the tides and how that affects different cultures and their ways of living. It's like to have that interrupted is a pretty big deal. And so it wasn't like a good thing. So it kind of makes sense why it was seen as more of this ominous, not stable event. So this is why a lot of people online are like, yeah, maybe don't make your moon water during the lunar eclipse in Pisces. That's, especially one where Saturn is there. And then that's my own practice coming in saying those things. So if you did make moon water, it's fine, drink it. But like, I'm not going to sign like a mortgage, on it if I can avoid it. Um, and I'll have to tell y'all a real example now from my life, because we're just riffing now. But this is, this is a good point to say as well. In general, with this information today, uh, please consider if you are in a year that is activating Pisces in your birth chart, or Libra in this eclipse cycle that we just had and that we're about to have. Look to see if you're in a year where Leo and Cancer are activated. So then sun or moon would be time lords. Then these eclipses are going to be a bit louder. If Libra, Pisces are activated, or if sun, moon are your time lords, any of those situations could all have this eclipse being a bit more active for you, or being a bit more loud, a bit more vivid. Now, I don't necessarily have any of those conditions. However, my moon is in Pisces. So if you have a luminary in like Libra, if you've got a Libra sun or a Libra moon in your birth chart, this might be affecting you quite a bit more. And I don't want to scare anyone, but I'm going to tell you my moon example that just happened because it's so good. It's so perfect. And it actually kind of helps to answer a question that I've had for a really long time, which is fun. All right. So like the astrologers of the Hellenistic and medieval times, they talk about how the moon is the left eye and the sun is the right eye. And sometimes some of them will say if it's a woman, you swap it and the right eye becomes the moon and the left eye becomes the sun. And I've always been like, I'm more of like I don't like that. Like, don't tell me to change things about gender. Like, it's all the same, like whatever. So I was on team, I'm not switching it based on gender. The left eye is the moon, the right eye is the sun. I don't care. And for me, I have my moon at 24 degrees of Pisces. And about 2 days before this eclipse, pretty much when the moon entered into Pisces, I noticed a sty on this eyelid. You can probably see it now. You'll be looking at it the whole time. I don't care. I'm willing to make this sacrifice because it's such a good example. I got a sty on my left eye. It's my left eye. The moon. The eclipse was happening on my moon. And I'm a woman. I'm a cis queer woman. Like I'm cis though. So like, yeah, I'm a woman. Yeah. So slam dunk, touchdown. This is the definition. If you ever hear people online saying hashtag astrologer good, this is what we mean. It's not good. It's not great, but here I am dealing with this. And it's such a great example. Now, what else is very cute about this is that the first line treatment for something like this, okay, now we're going to have pharmacy time for a eye sty or a hordeolum is another fancy word that we use for this. For the first line treatment for it is to do a warm compress 3 to 4 times a day for approximately 10-15 minutes. And so I've been putting a warm, wet rag over my eye for 10 minutes at a time. And guess what? The light gets interrupted. How dumb is that? Can you believe that? It's so astrologer good. I can't even believe it. So, you know, I'm fine. You know, I'm not in the moon year. I'm not in a sun year. If I profect from my ascendant or my luminary of sect or my lot of fortune, it's none of that. You know, maybe this would turn into a complicated thing if I was in a different year. I don't know. But yeah, I just thought that was such an excellent example of, you know, sometimes transits are going to affect you more than other ones. And it's based on like, is that transit happening on your stuff? Or is it happening in a place that's really activated? Or is it happening with a planet that's very activated? Those are kind of some of the conditions that I'm looking for. So, okay, good digression, good example. We got some of the symbolism down, and we know that Ketu, the south node, can actually represent beyond decrease, letting go, setting down, minimization, doing kind of what you need to do to keep things running, but not much more than that. Also, you know, more self-realization types of activities, or, you know, more spiritual letting goes or processings of things, you know. And so at this point, I think the only thing left to say before I actually jump into the rising signs is a little myth, a little chant. Yeah, actually, it's a few things. And kind of practical, what do I do with this? So I guess I'm going to do the myth of the dragon. If you've heard Rahu talk about the myth of the dragon. And the myth of the dragon, so there were these, and this comes more from Jyotish astrology, the Indian traditions. And there was a story where there was this immortal nectar, this immortal, I call it juice because I love juice. So I love thinking about it being juice. And this dragon wants some of it. But the devas, the gods, were like, no, this is not for you. And the dragon, they did something to like disguise themselves. They did a deception in order to get some of this immortal nectar. And they succeeded, but then they were found out and they got their head chopped off. And then it was just this disembodied head of a dragon, just nom 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 nom, no stomach, tummy gone. And so just nom nom, so hungry, insatiable. And also themes of deception and themes of distortion and greed and delusion, you know. So and also this idea of like, you know, this is one of my eclipse remediation activities is chanting to Dakshinamurti. That's not the one I'm going to do today at all. But Dakshinamurti is an aspect of Shiva, that part of a god that is like the guru teacher type of archetype, like the teacher of teachers. And you'll see in some imagery, I should have brought it up, but you'll have to, you know, if you have one, use your mind's eye, that Dakshinamurti, they're always like putting their foot onto Rahu, the head of the dragon, in this idea that they are putting a lid on ignorance, basically, not totally destroying it. And P.S., I learned some of this too from Nate Craddock, who is a great Jyotish astrologer, Soul Friend Astrology. Go check him out. He taught me some of this too, about how, you know, it's like you don't get rid of ignorance totally because then you don't have enlightenment. It's like a duality pair, like light and dark. You can't really get rid of it, but we need to understand and navigate through what is naturally arising confusion, naturally arising delusion that happens just because we're alive, because that's the kind of stuff that happens when you become alive. And so, you know, okay, Rahu, some themes of confusion, we'll just call it that. And so with the North Node, there's some of that. Now, the tail of the dragon, totally different thing. And I think it's important. I know this eclipse that's coming up is South Node. The one we just had was the North Node one, but it's easier to learn, I think, in these pairs sometimes. So the South Node, Ketu, the tail of the dragon, there is no mouth. The desire of sense pleasures of the material world is gone. Um, it's more about, what is immaterial, what's not of this world. So unworldly knowledge, unworldly pleasure, rapture, for instance. Yeah, spiritual visioning, spiritual questing, any kind of spiritual stuff you want to get into. Now, practically speaking, I guess last notes. Practically speaking, what do we do with South Node eclipses? What do we do with a solar eclipse on the South Node? Because it is so interesting that a new moon itself is a beginning and an ending, and a new moon that is really kind of just ratcheted up by the eclipse energy of it. It's like a new moon but bigger, a new moon but more new moony. Big beginnings and endings, great beginnings and endings. That's what Chris Brennan usually is using. Those are some of his keywords. Great beginnings and endings having to do with the topics of the house that we're working with. So great beginnings and endings with career, life path, public life. Practically speaking, look for these things happening internally. Great beginnings and endings inside. Maybe it's, oh, I'm going to deal with that situation in a different way from now on. Or I'm going to take on this new way of doing something, this new attitude, or having a new set of ideas around something. Maybe there's nothing external that's, changed, but it's more of an internal thing. Maybe this eclipse for you is about realizations, getting information, getting insight, becoming clear about something. A lot of times eclipses will help to give us more information that we didn't know that we needed. So if you're noticing a lot of clarity and letting go of certain things based on that clarity related to the house topics that we're working with. So those are some practical things. Cleaning, letting go. I mean, even now, we don't have to wait until the 2nd of October. I'm going to post this before then. So if you're listening to this and I've just posted this, yeah, we've got time to clean, declutter. We're almost at the equinoxes, so it's spring and fall for everyone. So it's kind of like that spring cleaning, fall cleaning. We're turning over a bit of a new leaf. And we can do that very physically too. So what else? I mean, and it is in a Venus place. This is a Venus ruled eclipse. Granted, they are not able to witness this one, so there is information there. But Venus does like cleaning. They are a planet of hygiene and hygienics and clean. So yeah, that would be a perfect mundane activity for this one. Um, Salt baths. Salt baths. If you are in the Sphere and Sundry universe, I know Caitlin gives access to those folks on the Mighty Networks, whatever. I think there's access to those PDFs about eclipse remediation on there. But one of the things that people talk about a lot, including there, are salt baths. And any kind of like emotional, spiritual lettings go. When letting go doesn't just happen in one swift blow. I don't that's usually not how that works. Usually it's a constant process of every time it comes up in us, we have to let something go or attempt to or to do that practice of letting go. This is maybe it's a really good push of that. A really good push of letting go of something or the way of doing something. So those are all more practical ways, I think, of considering like what to quote unquote do with this energy, approaching things of these house topics in more of an unattached way. And yeah, I guess the last thing that I would mention is, how are things in that Libra place of your chart? What things are kind of taking a passenger seat right now to some of the things that are going on in the Aries part of your chart? So for instance, if you are a Capricorn rising, what things in the career and life path have had to kind of be put in the passenger seat or even on the back burner of the stove? in order for you to focus more attention on the fourth house of, say, family, parents, ancestry, land, um, fourth house stuff, private life. So that South Node eclipse really shining light on maybe the stark the stark landscape, or the maybe more whittled down and refined landscape. And that's maybe the last way we'll talk about South Node: refinement. Um, Looking at, in the letting go, we can think of also the way that a sculptor sculpts and chips away parts that aren't really part of the ultimate shape. Or, the way a whittler, a wood carver whittles things down into a shape. Maybe we're having some clarity around what that shape is starting to look like. And, that is kind of the cool part about our focuses being pulled around in life, because other things are forced to adapt and they kind of get whittled down, maybe even unintentionally. But a lot of times that leaves us with like the very solid core of what is very firm there. And, this is a metaphor I use all the time in session with people, is that wherever the eclipses happen for a year and a half, wherever those lunar nodes are hanging out for 18 months, that is a time of rebalancing. It's not a stable time, but it's a rebalancing effort. It's a rebalancing energy. It's a rebalancing something. And it's like a garden. So, like in the fall, I'm going to be pulling stuff out. And this is kind of like Sam Reynolds, his metaphor too. He uses words like pruning and preserving and conserving. What is the most important in the Libra space? Like, what can we not get rid of, like, I can't get rid of like the whole garden bed. I don't want to. I need that. But this old kale plant that I haven't even touched, and it's just like sitting there looking at me all year. I'm going to get rid of that thing, and I'm going to put it out to get taken away. And then, you in spring, you're adding fertilizer and you are rebalancing the soil, getting the soil ready to eventually plant seeds. But, that point of me, picking weeds, putting in fertilizer, getting it all like mixed up, very necessary. It's part of the circle of life or whatever, but it's not like a stable point. Now, let's say you got to start a project at work, or you're getting married, or, let's say you're doing something big in these eclipse times. That's okay too. I know, okay, well, didn't I just talk about it being this ominous, interrupter of light that gave me or didn't give me, but is reflecting this sty situation? Maybe, it's like, yeah, maybe I don't want to plant things in an unstable thing. At the same time, life happens. It happens around us all the time. We can't control everything. What I observe in those situations is that now you are tuned into the eclipse clock, my friend, which happens every 6 months. And it's not good or bad. It's too complicated to just be good or bad. But what I do notice is, like, in a business or in a relationship, it's like every 6 months, every 3 months or so, it's like that's when plot points happen. That's when like you replace the dishwasher, or you restate your vows, or you go on that big trip that's really cool that inspires you to become an RV couple. Like, I'm just making stuff up, but it's these bigger moments, for better or for worse, that really shape the plot points of the story. So it doesn't have to be good or bad, but it definitely dials things into that clock, which is then something to watch for. And as someone who's, I'm kind of eclipse touched, and I have a partner who his chart is, so if you're born around an eclipse, you yourself, your life might just run kind of on these eclipse clocks. So watch that for what it's worth. I think that's my last astrological point. All right. Aries rising. We are going to be looking at this in your seventh house of partners, business partners, marriage partners, best friends, any really important one-on-one contact. Even if it's like an open, kind of not great relationship where we know we don't like each other, some people call it enemies, adversaries. If you have open adversaries, that's another important one-on-one contact. So in the seventh house, that's where we're going to be looking for new chapters opening up, great beginnings and endings, A lot of times a new thing opening up happens when an older thing goes away. And so looking for any kind of new chapters opening up with partners at this time. And this is a situation where it could be your partner who is having the new chapter opening up. And so if your partners or partner is having a new beginning or ending, or sorry, a great beginning, great ending during this eclipse on October 2nd or around it, or if, say, something comes around that might be the harbinger of some kind of great beginning and ending, that would really fit for this eclipse. It can happen in really subtle ways. So it could be that you and your partner, you become like D&D people, or you have a new beginning, or sorry, a new chapter opening up that has to do with something that you're doing for fun together as a couple. It could be that you realize, you know what, this thing that we used to do, we're not doing that anymore, and we're gonna spend more of our time doing this other stuff. So, and even more abstractly, the ways that we approach partnership, our attitudes toward partnership. This is happening in a pretty intellectual place, and so, really maybe what is being let go during this South Node eclipse, a releasing of old ways of doing partnership and really coming into new ways of navigating partnership. So being open to ideas and being open to setting down ones or experimenting with ones, not using ones that you used to. Um, yeah, that's what I have to say for Aries rising. Good luck. And then if we move to Taurus rising, so Libra is going to be in your sixth house. And this is a place of health, wellness, disease, recovery from disease, essentially all the things we do to take care of ourselves and our bodies. Sometimes it's taking care of others and it's caregiver duties. Um, the sixth house really holds a lot of toil, a lot of labor, whether that's a bill paying job, a service thing that you're doing out of the kindness of your heart, or some other kind of obligation or duty. The sixth house has to do with pets, small animals. We have also kind of these hierarchical structures we see in the workspaces. So supervisors and people that they supervise, who they supervise. If you yourself have a boss, that kind of stuff can be found in the sixth house. Uh, War, conscription, conflict, all sixth house matters. And this also includes healthy conflict. So that could be really healthy conflict isn't always a bad thing. Um, those are all sixth house topics where we could be seeing new chapters opening up, big new beginnings or endings. We could see any kind of shift in some new direction that really it feels like a new start potentially. And a lot of times it does happen that when a new thing begins, necessarily other things close, wrap up, complete, end. And sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes there's endings, beginnings together. Sometimes it's just a beginning. So if you are finding new ways of taking care of your health, finding new employment opportunities, if you are beginning a new job, that would all fit here. If you are going to start some endeavor having to do with labor, health, or pets, maybe it's a new chapter opening up in terms of how you take care of animals. This, if you're more of like a farm situation, this is domesticated animals as well, particularly those smaller than a goat. And so goats and smaller also go in the sixth house. Maybe there's new chapters opening, great beginnings and endings with your livestock situation. Dear Taurus rising, I think that those are pretty much the points there. So if you are looking to kind of hit a reset button on health, wellness, how you're taking care of pets, yourself, or others, or animals, this is a great time to do that. Getting rid of old ways of doing things. Looking at the patterns and habits that might be going around in the sixth house and looking at the ones that aren't serving you anymore. And maybe they had a protective function at some point, so it's not like they're bad, but maybe they're just not the best fit at this point. And so gently setting those down. That's what I have for you. Good luck, Taurus rising. I hope things are great, and We'll talk again the next time I do one of these. So then we have Gemini Rising, and this is going to be in your fifth house. So this is another one of those where an external person to you could steal this transit. Maybe this is a new chapter with your children, if you have any children. Maybe the new chapter, great beginnings and endings, are happening with them. You know, maybe they're discovering their next great love. Maybe your child is discovering they really love Legos and they're totally over connects and they don't like them anymore. Maybe, you know, it's like kids are changing their preferences like every 6 months. Like they're discovering their personalities. Like, so there's so many little cute ways that this could be going on that are not like, you know, concerning. But watch for that with anything to do with your children if you have children. Um, if you are a parent, this could have to do with your parenting style, letting go of certain ways of doing things, having new chapters opening up. One that would be really just natural would be like potty training, completing that, you know, putting the kind of like helper tools and aids away because you don't need them anymore, or getting rid of them at, you know, garage sale, whatever. Um, yeah, being done with naps, you know, that happens at some point, I've heard. I don't have kids. I'm only, you know, stating these things from observation. So yeah, there's a lot of natural new chapters when it comes to fifth house and children that happen all the time. Um, when it comes to creativity and self-expression, this could be cleaning out your craft closet. This could also be letting go of certain ways of thinking that have held you back creatively. Um, you know, or working on that or having some breakthrough or insight when it comes to your creative practices and how you do that. Uh, New chapters opening up in self-expression, Gemini rising. Maybe you're experimenting with new ways of expressing yourself, new mediums, even just new ways of being that are really like allowing you to shine and be you. And you're letting go of old ways of being in that space and doing things a little differently. So new chapters there. Fifth house is rest, rejuvenation, filling of the cup. And so if you are a Gemini rising, this could be a new chapter opening up in terms of how you're taking care of yourself, rest wise. If you haven't been resting much, this could be a call to open up a new chapter in terms of your rest. Um, let's see, rest, pleasure, sex, romance. It could be a new chapter opening up romantically. It could be a new chapter opening up sexually. And so if there's old things to get rid of in terms of anything romantically, whether it's an old dating profile, old sexual practices, old sexual health kind of attitudes that aren't serving you anymore from culture, you know, there's so much stuff that gets put on us. Um, Same with parenting, probably. I mean, anything of the fifth, the way that our culture, like, you know, tells us we should be doing things, should, you know, letting go of that with the South Node, that would be a good use of it. Because this is an air place, it's very intellectual. What else? Those are kind of the main things. Um, yeah, play, rest, rejuvenation, fun, self-expression, rest, new chapters and fun. Maybe you're discovering something fun that's new. Or maybe you're finally letting go of the fact that this thing that you used to think was fun is no longer fun. And you're letting go of that. And you know what? It was a great ride while it lasted, but we're not going to be doing that anymore. Oh, and vices. A great new chapter opening up in terms of your relationship with vices, if you have any, where a new chapter would be helpful to open up. So, and one last thing about Gemini rising. So, if this is in your fifth house, there is a chance if you're using whole sign houses that the IC could be over in your fifth house. And so for you, I'm just going to list off the total list of things that this eclipse could be about. Great beginnings and endings around fifth house, children, sex, rest, self-expression, creativity, creative process, relationships with vices. If your IC is here by whole sign, this could also be about home, dwelling, real estate, rentals, rental properties, land, your relationship with the land, parents, family, ancestors, intergenerational topics, and your private life. Great beginnings and endings, new chapters opening up in terms of those more fourth housey, IC topics of parents, private life, land, home. All right, that's what I have for you, Gemini. That's the final thing. And then we have Cancer rising. Dear Cancer babies, you are having this in your fourth house of home, family, dwelling, like where you live, the land you're on, your origins, all the conditioning from your past and your origins, your parents' parents, your ancestors. All of that is fourth house, intergenerational themes, including intergenerational trauma, or intergenerational wealth. All of those things are fourth housey. Your private life is fourth house. So parents, family, living space, land, ancestors, private life. New chapters opening up with that. So new chapters with family, new chapters in terms of your private life, new chapters opening up in living situations. If there's not anything manifesting externally at this time, maybe it's an internal process that's happening around those topics. It can be a letting go of old things that aren't serving us anymore. So old ideas about family life, about private life, having one or not. Old ideas about how we have a relationship with the land, letting go of any kind of old concepts about these fourth house topics that no longer help. With this, if you are in a position to control, like when you sign documents about land, real estate, dwelling with renters, with landlords, stuff of that nature, if it's happening around this time, in 6 months from now, check in with that situation if you need to. If you can avoid signing things around the 1st and 2nd of October, I would recommend it in general. Not the end of the world, again, if you do, but if it were me, that's the advice that I would use for myself. So that's what I'll tell you all. And this is another one too, where this could be about your parents. So your parents might be having a new chapter opening up. They might kind of yank this transit from you, and you might be seeing this transit in parents. So if your parents or grandparents are having new chapters opening up for them in some way, it could also be that. So that's what I have for you, Cancer rising. Thank you so much. Good luck. If you are a Leo rising, now this is going to be in your 3rd house of short distance travel, local familiar spaces, familiar people, neighbors, siblings, extended relatives, in-laws, local familiar people, places, things, dream divination. So watch your dreams, I guess, during this eclipse, Leo rising. If you're having a question, you can maybe pose that question to yourself before you go to sleep and see if you dream about it on October 1st or 2nd. The 3rd house is also a place of communication, writing, and there can be new chapters opening up with all of these things. New chapters opening up with neighborhood or neighbors, with extended relatives or siblings. New chapters opening up in your kind of short distance travel practices. If you say get a job at a different place and now you have less of a commute or more of a commute, that could be a thing. If you're having changes in your short distance travel mode, maybe you're going from bike to car or car to train, or, making changes in that kind of your mode of short distance travel. That could be a thing that happens during this eclipse. Different chapters opening up in terms of communication style, how you want to be communicated with, how you would like to communicate. And then this is also the 3rd house, a place of regular rituals, regular spiritual practice, the embodiment of our spiritual practices and beliefs. So kind of in a regular, mundane way. It's all the fun kind of, planetary magical oils I put on myself at the right day and hour. If you're a Christian, you're going to church. All of the regular things that you do to upkeep your spiritual self in a lot of ways. That is the third house. And so new chapters opening up in how you embody your belief, how you practice your beliefs. So that is kind of one huge bucket, the third house. It's like and I totally don't know. So someone please comment if you know who said this first, but I've heard the third house be referred to as the junk drawer of the houses because there's just so much stuff in there. Um, so many different things. What makes it even more Leo rising, if you have your IC here by whole sign, like this example here where the IC is in Libra in the third house, then this eclipse is going to be also to do with fourth house topics of home, dwelling, where you live, living situations, parents, grandparents, ancestry, intergenerational themes, your private life. It could also have to do with all of those things. So there's a lot to work with there. There's a lot of potential topics where you could see new chapters opening up or unfolding. And so that's where you want to watch. So thank you, Leo Rising, and best of luck with this eclipse in Libra. And so for Virgo Risings, we are going to have this in your second house. So the South Node has been in your second house. It's going to be in your second house. And the second house has to do with more than money. It is your money. Excuse me. It's also resources, really at all. Any resources that support you, whether it is a material resource, whether it is that your friend has a Costco membership and they can get you stuff for a discount, or maybe it's like your own internal skills and talents that you can sell for money. It's your needs, the things that you need to support you as well. That's what the second house can describe. And so how are those needs met? What are those needs? How are they met? So there's new chapters opening up, great beginnings and endings in terms of your second house of money, new chapters with resourcing, new chapters opening up in terms of your needs and how those needs are being met. I can't help but notice in this particular situation that Mercury, and you are Mercury in this situation, they are here. And the planet ruling this eclipse is in the third house of communication. So we've got kind of two notes here that could be communicating and relational. And so, even new chapters opening up in how needs are communicated or how you want to be communicated with from other people. It goes both ways, right? So, getting a little bit into the weeds there with you, dear Virgo rising, a little more details for you than some of the other rising signs. But yeah, definitely look to that second house of money, resourcing needs in terms of where the new chapters might be opening up, beginnings and endings happening. And then we have Libra rising. You have a front row seat. This is happening right in your first house of mind, body, and spirit. It's yourself. It's the whole thing. So it is your physical form, your body, including your health. The first house is your appearance, because that's part of having a body. It is the personality, the soul, the intellect, the identities, everything about the first house. Very much you, Libra rising. And it is also your general circumstances, which is kind of vague, but the first house is your general circumstances. That's just how that works. Now, new chapters opening up, great beginnings and endings in the first house of self. So if you are embarking on new health routines, getting rid of old ways of being, old appearances, maybe you're getting rid of old wardrobe things and getting new ones in. Maybe you are growing out your bangs, or maybe you're getting some. New chapters opening up in appearance. Maybe you're starting a new skincare routine. Maybe, there's something to do with, and I kind of wonder if it ties into what you're investing in here as well, what you're spending money on or resourcing yourself with in terms of health, self, identity, appearance. New chapters opening up in your roles. Sometimes the first house has so much to do with roles that we have in this world. So, maybe if you're becoming a parent, this is a new chapter opening up in you being a parent. If you got a new job, maybe something about that. But all in all, looking at really any kind of thing you see burgeoning forth, or being kind of a harbinger or an omen for a new chapter opening up. It could, I guess, last way of thinking about this, maybe a bit more psychologically, if this is in your first house of self, letting go of old ways of thinking about yourself, letting go of or setting down temporarily ways of considering yourself. And so if, especially if your internal dialogue is a little rough, a little rocky, if there's a lot of criticism happening, maybe this could be a good opportunity to hit the reset button and open up a new chapter and having a softer internal dialogue that has a bit more compassion. This is a place of equanimity, of mental balance, of mental, not indifference, not nihilism, but not being moved by what goes on in the mind. Um, so letting go of old ways of thinking of the self, letting new ones come in, and maybe even letting more compassionate, neutral types of assessments come in. Knowing that the South Node is rather spiritual. If this was a new chapter opening up in spiritual practice with the self, that would really fit this as well. So good luck, Libra Rising. Very exciting. Now, if we go to our Scorpio risings, speaking of resets in spiritual practice, we've got the 12th house coming in for Scorpio risings. So for this house, it's actually one of my longer lists of house topics. So looking for new chapters opening up, great beginnings and endings in terms of your mental health, emotional health, spiritual health, and related practices. New chapters opening up in chronic health issues or chronic health challenges, long-standing challenges of any variety. New chapters opening up in suffering and how it's managed, or internal work. New chapters in how you retreat or go very far away in loneliness, dealing with loneliness. New chapters opening up in terms of solitude, whether that's less solitude or more. New chapters opening up with enemies, frenemies, hidden enemies, annoying people. We probably won't even know if that's happening. Not to scare anyone, but we wouldn't know anyway. And it's kind of none of our business. And well, sometimes it should be. New chapters opening up in terms of larger deadly animals. So that's one of my favorite ones, exotic animals, animals that are from very far away, hidden places, or animals that could potentially kill us. So I do find large, like horses, cows are probably the most mundane that a lot of us really run into in terms of 12th house animals. But if you have like snakes, if you have, I don't know, like anything poisonous or venomous as a pet, sometimes that's more of a 12th housey pet. Now, we can also see with the 12th house confinement and loss of agency. People always talk about prisons and hospitals. I think a lot of the underlying thread of that is suffering and a loss of agency and being really taken out of regular life. And so if for whatever reason there's some kind of chapter opening up here that is difficult, if you're looking at this saying, uh-oh, I do not like the chapter that is opening up here, I can understand that that is not ideal. And this is where we really use this clock to try to give us a bit of a peace of mind, to kind of lovingly kick that can down the road and say, okay, if this is going to be a long-standing challenge of the 12th, as it can be, I'm going to check in 3 months in between eclipses. I'm going to check in 6 months at the next eclipse and see what's going on there. Now, what I'm kind of wondering, and I should say with this being in Libra, this is one of the last ones that we have in this axis, and the next ones are actually going to start happening in the 11th and the 5th. So what I don't see for Scorpio risings, I don't really see like a new chapter opening up with like a whole new hidden enemy or a whole new chronic health challenge or a whole new thing. It really feels like more of the endings of a story or a saga, being it's like, yeah, these nodes are going to go into a whole new place and deal with a whole new set of topics. So, hopefully it's nothing out of left field for you, dear Scorpio risings, but Do look for new chapters happening with 12th house topics, mostly suffering, spirituality, and hidden stuff, and all the ways that that intersects. Um, good luck. And now we have Sagittarius, and they are going to be having this in their 11th house of friends, groups, hopes, dreams, and aspirations. So we can think about how, the sun really travels up to the top of the sky and then starts to descend and dip down and then set eventually. But at this 11th house, this is a very on our way there kind of place. We are on our way up to the midheaven. We are on our way up to the public life. We're on our way up to final achievement and culmination and being known for something. But in the 11th, sometimes it's more like that aspiration. And aspirations can be material world achievement. It can be spiritual stuff like I aspire to be kind, or I aspire to be, X, Y, or Z. It can be beyond achievement or beyond aspiration. The 11th house can also be groups. It could be group aspiration. You can put them together. It can be group expression, kind of contrasted against fifth house self-expression. In the 11th, group expression, maybe a new chapter opening up with groups, a new chapter opening up with what you're aspiring toward, new chapters opening up in terms of friends. And sometimes that's really natural if you're, again, like changing jobs, moving, getting married, or getting a new partner and getting introduced to all of their people. There can be so many new chapters that can open up. And also chapters ending if you're leaving a work or a location situation. So, letting go is a bit more of the energy of this eclipse. So if there is a letting go, a new chapter, but a letting go of certain groups, a letting go of certain ways of doing group expression, a letting go of, I guess, certain even aspirations. It's kind of like I used to find this very important and I used to maybe work toward that. And now that's not so much of a focus. And sometimes that's because you achieved it. And sometimes it's because it's just no longer holding your interest, and that's okay. I think some of us, especially maybe if you're more of a fixed person, depending, it can be hard to let go of things because of sunk cost fallacy. Oh, I've put so much into this. I've been working toward this for so long, but you can't let that. That's a trick. It's false. It's fake news. Just because you've invested a lot, that's not a reason to stick around or keep doing it. So sometimes letting go of old aspirations or things that really aren't setting our heart on fire anymore, but we're just continuing to do because we feel like we should for some reason. Yeah, letting go of that stuff, or even just temporarily setting it down for like 3 to 6 months to see what life is like, taking a break from it. Sometimes that's what the South Node can do, is just have us taking a break from something. So trying something out new chapters opening up with friends or groups with aspirations, hopes, or dreams. Hopefully that's helpful for you, Sagittarius rising. Now, oh, sorry, one more thing. If you are a Sagittarius rising, your midheaven could be in the 11th. So if you've got your midheaven, your MC in the 11th, it's bringing over those career, life path, public life topics from the 10th. And so this eclipse for you, if you're a Sag rising, whole sign houses, midheaven in the 11th, then new chapters also opening up with career, with life path, with your public life, what you're known for, new chapters opening up there. Great beginnings and endings with career, great beginnings and endings with public life. That could happen, for better or for worse. So that's the last thing. Thank you, Sagittarius rising. Good luck. And if you are a Capricorn rising, this is in your 10th house proper now. This is right up in the 10th. So career, public life, what you're known for, your life trajectories, your life paths, whether or not you get paid for them. This is like what you are doing here in a lot of ways. This is the Greeks called it a place of praxis or action. It's Aries in the theme of Mundi. It's like, what am I doing here? It can be legacy in some ways. What am I known for? Kind of the eulogy. It's not where you started, but it's where you ended up. That's very 10th housey, and there's new chapters opening up here. So new chapters in career, life path, life trajectories opening up. Maybe great beginnings, great endings with certain paths. And it does have that kind of letting go quality to this eclipse with the South Node being here. So it could be new chapters opening up, but there's something that's being left behind or let go of. It could even be just more abstractly the way that you're approaching these topics. Maybe there's a new way that you're approaching career from an internal perspective. Like, I'm going to approach this work in this way versus this way. Maybe it's a different attitude about life path, career, life trajectories. A different way of dealing with public life or being in public. And with the South Node here, this could be a new beginning that, or something of a spiritual quality, like a new chapter, spiritually speaking, in how you operate in your career or public life. So, especially with Libra coming in with, notes of ethics or ethical conduct or morals or any kind of relational types of qualities coming in, like new chapters opening up, even in your own ethos. One thing I've been noticing recently, this is in my ninth, which I'm about to get to, but I've been reading a lot of philosophical papers lately that have had like new chapters opening up in my mind, and it's just really fruitful. So, this doesn't have to be like ominous, as eclipses can be. But dear Capricorn Rising, new chapters opening up in your public life, your trajectories, your paths. If you are an Aquarius Rising, good luck, Capricorns. If you're an Aquarius Rising, we've got this in your ninth. So I was using this example for the Capricorn Risings too, just the intellectual nature of things that can happen up here in the Libra space. But new chapters opening up in belief, worldview, and wouldn't you know it, me, an Aquarius Rising, I have been reading some really great academic papers lately, and I've been reading some really great just Dhamma talks and just all kinds of ninth housey conceptual stuff has been coming in, really blasting open my brains in a really cool way. So if you are, I know it's not even here yet, but I know this is what we're coming into. And, looking at the ninth house, if you're looking at new worldviews coming in, new ways of thinking, new ways of operating from like a worldview perspective, that's what this eclipse could be up to. Ninth house is also a place of long distance travel. So new chapters opening up in terms of long distance travel. Now, sometimes faraway places come to us when you're on a Zoom call with a bunch of international people or people from around the country or something. So new chapters opening up where you might be engaging with people from far away or with faraway places for some reason in some course of your life. The ninth house is a place of politics. 2000 years ago, government, church, university, they were all the same building. So any place with hierarchies, bureaucracy, any kind of system that one might have to navigate, that can be very ninth housey. Hierarchies, So new chapters opening up, like let's say you are applying for citizenship somewhere. Let's say you are having to apply for a travel visa. Anything that's like logistical. Maybe it's a permit of some kind to build something. Maybe it's you know, any kind of like bureaucratic process. If there's a new chapter opening up here, congratulations. Put the 6-month timestamp on it. Now you're on the eclipse clock. Check in every 6 months. Heck, check in every 3 months, and see how things are going here. If you are looking at this from the perspective of ninth house advanced or continuing education, this could be a new chapter opening up in either teaching or learning, more of an advanced topic, a new chapter opening up in some kind of continuing learning experience, just kind of the next big thing maybe on your learning path. So watch out for any big chapters opening up educationally. And then what else is this? Publications, mass communication. So any new chapters opening up, great beginnings or endings, having to do with mass communicating or publishing. Now, this is like, in this day and age, this is a blog. This is a video log, a vlog. This is more than just formal publications. Anything you are broadcasting widely could be a new chapter opening up there. And then finally, the ninth house is astrology, divination, philosophy, religion, kind of on that worldview train, but specifically astrology, divination, beliefs in that way as well. So if that's a relevant topic for you, if you're listening to me and you're an astrologer or diviner or a student of any of those things, this could be a new chapter opening up in that as well. Yeah, Aquarius rising. One last thing. If you have your midheaven in the ninth whole sign house in your chart, if you're using whole signs, then this eclipse could also be great new beginnings, great endings, new chapters opening up with your career, life path, your public life. Let me see if I can actually. No, I can't. Yeah, I don't know if it's going to work, but yeah, just imagine the midheaven is in your ninth house. That's what that's going to look like. This is over here. Then eclipse might also touch those 10th house topics of life path, life trajectories, career. So some fun stuff to watch for there. And if there are big changes happening, yeah, that would make sense for Aquarius rising. Good luck. And if you want to watch me as a kind of a guinea pig, stay tuned, subscribe. I'm an Aquarius rising, so you know, you'll see. You will see. Okay. Pisces rising, we made it. It took me as long as I would have expected it to. So Pisces, thanks for waiting. And this is happening in your eighth house. And your eighth house is, let's see. I mean, I guess I should say if your midheaven is here, this is also like that would be if you're very far north, like if you're in Sweden. And I'm saying this because I'm thinking of people. I'm like, I know I have clients that have the midheaven in the eighth and the 12th. I've got a few of you. So just so you know, if you are a Pisces rising and you're having your midheaven in the eighth, this eclipse might also affect your career, life path, public life, that kind of stuff. It could be a new chapter opening up in terms of career, life path, public life. But I think that the new chapters are more going to be for Pisces rising with the eighth house of end of life topics, collaboration, shared resources, your partner's resources, complex finances, including debt and taxes. So that was a lot. I'm gonna sit on this for a minute. So this could be one of those situations for Pisces risings where this could be about your partner's stuff or your partner's money. Maybe a partner gets a raise or something happens with their resources. That's a big change. Hopefully not for the negative. It could be for better or for worse. But look more to them to see if there's anything going on. There might not be. In that case, your partner's resources might not be relevant for this eclipse, but that's definitely a possibility here. So new chapters opening up there. More abstractly, because we're always thinking about money when we talk about resourcing. I think a lot of us are. There's also a lot more to that in terms of time, energy, attention, listening, um, any skill or talent that you and your partner are exchanging or sharing. This could be a new chapter opening up with that. So if you have a business partner, a marriage partner, a best friend, if there's any challenges right now with like fairness, reciprocity, whether or not you feel like things are like there's a good give and take that's sustainable, this could be a new chapter opening up in those challenges or issues if there are any. Or if there's just a certain way that you go about with sharing with people or how they go about sharing with you, maybe there's a new chapter opening up with how you share or how they share. Um, so lots of stuff with collaboration happening in the eighth. There's also new chapters potentially with this eclipse in terms of end of life topics. Now that's a wide one too, because you've got inheritance, you've also got estate planning and management, things like advanced directives where you're kind of trying to plan for, how you want to go out. All kinds of end of life ancillary things beyond just the death itself. So if you're like me and you're in your 30s and you're, somewhat of like I'm pretty healthy. I don't think I'm going to die anytime soon, knock on wood. There's still plenty here to work with. So if you want a new chapter opening up in maybe researching these things, maybe your parents are getting older and it's a new chapter opening up, and hey, maybe we should have some conversations about end of life care and how we want to do all of this. It's good not to wait until, things start to get rough, because then it's even harder to deal with what are some tender topics usually. Um, but really fruitful time to allow for new things to turn over in this area for how we just meet end of life stuff. Um, Complex finances, retirement, debt, taxes. So new chapters opening up with debt. If you're paying off things, if you're paying off student loan debt, this could be a new chapter there, hopefully good ones. If you have any kind of debt, whether you're taking on new debt or getting rid of old debt, that could really fit here. There is a letting go or a decreasing more happening with this stuff. So it feels more like, hopefully less debt, paying off debt. That would be a very nice way this could come out. Having a more spiritual approach to death, to debt, to complex finances, having a more spiritual approach to collaboration. I was just listening to something about non-possessiveness from a John Amaro. I'll put it below. Letting go of this notion of possessiveness, if that's a thing. That could be a really good use for what this weather is. I think those are the main things. Let me just double check. Occult esoteric topics. So, thinking about this from a derived houses point of view, that if the ninth is more the mainstream religious practices of a state at any given time, or the ninth house is just the, kind of more mainstream philosophies, the eighth is the 12th from the ninth. It's the 12th house. If we count around from the ninth, it's the last one. And it's in this hidden space from the ninth. So we can kind of by derived houses land that, oh, this is kind of the stuff they didn't want us to know about. Ah, haha, but I know about it. And more modernly, we talk about this places like taboo. I mean, a lot about how people collaborate. There's a lot of stuff in there we don't like to talk about. And with money and debt and taxes and death, yeah, a lot of people don't like to talk about any of those things. So the taboo part makes a lot of sense too. But yeah, esoteric occult stuff. Maybe you're just getting into tarot and you live in the religious South of the United States, where that is usually frowned upon pretty heavily in a lot of places, from what I hear. Even my own rural kind of conservative place where I grew up. Yeah, pretty taboo, esoteric, occulty kind of things from that relative experience. So maybe you're having a new chapter opening up about that, dear Pisces Rising. Maybe that's what it's about. So it could be any of those topics. But yeah, don't forget too to look at your partner and what's going on with their kind of resource situation. And there might be new chapters opening up. They're great beginnings and great endings. Okay, I think that wraps it up for everyone. And I thank you so much. Thank you so much to everyone. If you listen to the intro, that's really good stuff in there for priming you for how to use these rising sign horoscopes. So I urge you to listen to that. However, I mean, you can do the one-stop shop too. It's fine. If you have any questions, hit me below in the comments section. I try to come around every few weeks and answer things. So there's sometimes a delay in how quick I am able to respond to people's comments, but I get there eventually, I promise. If you want to sign up for my newsletter, I guess I'm done with the wheel. If you want to sign up for my newsletter, www.aligninglightastrology.com/newsletter sign up. It's linked below. That'll give you a once a month little peek into what I'm doing. I give you all my events, my timings of when I'm going to be on YouTube, and also my discount codes. Love giving out discount codes. People seem to like getting them. So sign up for my newsletter if you like to get those. If you are wanting to get my services, of course, I'm always booking. I'm not that far booked out right now, actually. And I understand though that it can be kind of expensive. So if you are, I mean, pretty much there's a wide net here, but if you're having financial hardship, especially if you're someone who has been oppressed by all of our systems that be, I have a whole thing about this on my website in my frequently asked questions section about my sliding scale. Or you could just Google aligning light astrology sliding scale and it'll probably come up. But scroll down a little bit, it's all the information. Email me aligninglightastro@gmail.com. You can email me and we can figure out, you know, how to we'll analog set up a reading and it'll be a bit cheaper if that's helpful. Um I don't want people's situations to get in the way of being able to get help from this tool because it's a really powerful tool that I think can give us some orientation in time in a way that we don't have. So usually, we kind of look around and we can say, oh, this is the ceiling, this is the floor, here are the walls, east, north, west, south. We don't have that for time unless we have astrology, which helps us to bookend things, be like, okay, this is the quality of the time I'm in. This is the weather that I'm in, metaphysically speaking. These are the bookends of when this weather starts and stops. And I can start to get more of a chronological orientation in not only space, but time. And to have orientation in both space and time, whoa, definitely worth doing, which is why I have a sliding scale. So anyway, and of course, again, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you want to keep up with this. I'm going to try to do more of this rising sign focused material because, again, I just feel like it's the most effective means. Besides getting a reading, the most effective means of using astrology is one-on-one with a professional astrologer or someone who just knows it really well. The second best way of engaging with astrology, in my opinion, in this way is, well, now I want to go back. I'm going to start over. The first way is watching the sky, going outside. Second way is with an astrologer. Third way, these rising sign horoscopes that are really focusing on something for the house topics that it's actually going to happen for you in. The fourth way, which is what I usually do, my fourth most effective way of engaging with astrology with people is through more of those general lunar transit type of forecasting episodes that I do. Much more general. And then it takes more work on the individual's part to put that into their own chart. So again, that's why this feels a bit more effective. I'm going to try to do a little bit more of this, a little bit less of that fourth way of doing things. But with that, I'm rambling, my light turned off. So I'm going to take that as a sign. And I hope this was helpful. Enjoy the eclipse, watch it. I don't know. I'm going to be out there with a pina colada if it's, oh yeah, look below, see if it's visible in your area, in your region. If it is, I'm going to be out there. I love watching them. Hit me with the baleful rays. It's going to be fine. I guess you'll find out if it's not. But yeah, good luck everyone. And remember to be here. If you're future tripping, if you're thinking about all of the things that can happen in the future, that all these ways that we can worry and anticipate, and there's no way that we can escape this uncertainty. There's always going to be a little. So remember to come back into your body right now, right here, into your senses, and remember what Roshi Joan Halifax said. Remember that we can face the world with an open heart. We can face the world with softness and with a smile, and do our best, and just and respond. That's the idea. And this is going to hopefully help us to respond a little bit more skillfully. If we can kind of see it coming down the pipe, we can have a little bit more time to decide how we want to respond. So that's the idea. Good luck, everyone. Happy eclipse.